Hello everyone, I am Tacet, and today I'm going to be going over the Legion of the Damned Gems of War event, in which the Lamashtu is added to the game. Also, for any of you that haven't been catching any of my streams, I am finally back from the hurricane. Of course, that's why I wasn't doing any kind of streams or anything last week, but we should be back to normal schedule now. Still just need to get the mythic video out, and of course this one. But after that, we're pretty much all caught up, and everything should be back to normal. Hopefully, no more hurricanes will hit, no damage, and all cleanup is done. So all that's finally dealt with, and hopefully no more hurricanes this year. But anyways, let's get into the event. So, Lamashtu, she is pretty good. She's kind of like a inverse Mercy. Not as good as a Mercy, but has different color options. The inverse of it, so works out pretty well. As far as her actual colors, it of course is red and yellow. She's an epic, so you'll be able to get these for as cheap as you'll ever be able to get them. The Arcane Storm Trade Stones, only 200 glory each, 400 per pack with 2 of each, of course, each time. But if you want to go and get these trait stones, there are a lot of things that you could use these for. Earlier on in the game, you'd mostly want to just put it into Goblin Rocket and Valkyrie. Valkyrie for soul farming, and Goblin Rocket just because it's a really good board control option with a +1 red. After that, as far as mid-game and late-game options, Divinia is probably the first thing you would end up putting into, just because of its random stats effects. It's also technically the best thing that could use the newest mechanic that came in the most recent patch a couple weeks ago in 4.5, the Reflect mechanic, something that's not really used that much. However, Divinia does use it best, and she does require 16 of those to get her final traits for that. And other than that, there are a billion other things. There's Lamashtu herself, there's Apotheosis, there's Chief Dragon, there's Gimlet, which is really good for Browns, particularly for Mountain Crusher. There's King Selinus, there's Quillin, and there's Scurvy Sea Dog, and of course all the mythics. So there's definitely not a lack of options for red yellow. So if you've been needing to stock up, particularly on the empowered options, it's definitely a good time to do so. As far as this troop, as I mentioned, it is basically inverse Mercy as far as the ability. Instead of converting all purple to yellow, it converts all yellow to purple. This will obviously be pretty good in any kind of team that does need a lot of purple. It hits the weakest enemy, which necessarily isn't really that good. If it did the strongest, it'd probably be a little bit better, just because most of the purple combinations that you would use it on are already kind of either going to be doing that same mechanic or going to be doing some kind of large AoE or multi-hit ability, where that hitting the weakest won't necessarily actually be that useful, but it's still extra damage nonetheless. The only real big thing that she's lacking compared to an inverse Mercy, because of course Mercy heals the weakest where she hits the weakest on the opposing team, she does not have Dispel. Of course, Mercy gets to cleanse all allies, but this does not have Dispel to all enemies. I believe this mainly might be because of Wisp. Wisp, back when it had Empowered, actually got nerfed down to 75%. It was mostly because of the Charm, more so than the Dispel. But I guess they just didn't want to give another troop 100% chance to do Dispel off the very first turn. So that's probably why she doesn't have Dispel, so that she could still maintain the Empowered. But yeah, pretty good option. Not necessarily better than Mercy, but of course the team compositions it's used for are completely different. So it should still be a pretty solid troop option, and definitely one that you want to get. Of course, it is a Blighted Lands event this time around, which means all the Blighted Lands event key stuff. As far as your drop table for that, nothing too over the top. Of course, if we just go over to Blighted Lands over here, I'll bring up essentially everything that is available, with the only exclusions being the Doom of Flame is not available. However, everything else that you see here will be available in the event key drop table this week. Personally, I would say this is a great week just to skip. There isn't really anything particularly noteworthy from this kingdom. Actually, probably the most noteworthy troop now is Lamashtu herself. Other than that, Inferno King is used occasionally, but not that often. Hellcat, similarly, but again, not that often. It's mostly used for red mana accumulation. And the Mythic's basically never touched. Even after it got buffed a little while back to be slightly more effective, it's still pretty underwhelming. Just because Daemons in general are pretty underwhelming in the current state of the game, and this kingdom is almost entirely Daemons. So yeah, not really too noteworthy. I would definitely say skip event keys this time around. As far as our weekly event stuff, we have 10% to all Daemons as well as 10% to all Knights. This has almost no overlap, so that's not really going to be too useful. What might be slightly useful if you want to go and utilize it is Lamashtu gives 5 extra glory in PvP. And while these things aren't necessarily too good that often, this thing won't necessarily slow you down if you're using it in a natural team composition that utilizes it. So it's basically just a free extra 5 glory if you just happen to be using it to fill some kind of troop with purple real quick, then quick kill the enemy team. Could end up giving you a lot of glory. It's also going to be a Vault event this weekend though, so you're probably just going to be doing the Vault event if you want more glory. However, if you want to do both simultaneously, you could. But yeah, you'll be able to get a lot of glory this week one way or another, either through this and or through the Vault event that's going to be going from Friday, Saturday, and Sunday this weekend. So, other stuff. One of our keys, we have ourselves Tower of Doom this week. Tower of Doom is actually completed in the sense that we have now gotten every single Doom twice. I believe we will be getting now the weapons not cycling back again, but brand new ones. So we've gotten every single Doom event twice. So we should be getting a new set of weapons. Last I recall, they are not going to be repeating these. They'll still be coming on their weeks. Like, for example, this one will be coming back whenever the next Kedar event is. However, they're just going to start adding new ones now, is most likely what we're going to do. So we're probably going to have another set of 2 Doom weapons for a total of 4 per color over the course of the next year or so. So, yeah, but now we can finally get all of the Doom weapons that create Doom Skulls maxed, if you haven't already. Of the 2 Doom weapons per color that exist, it is, of course, the better option of the 2. They might be buffing it in the future and might be adding more ways to accumulate it, but as it currently stands, the most effective way to use your scrolls they end up getting from Dooms is to upgrade the 6 Doom Skull creating weapons, which are Doomed Axe, Doomed Blade, Doomed Club, Doomed Crossbow, which can be upgraded now to level 10, Doomed Glaive, and Doomed Scythe. Technically, all of these could have already been upgraded to level 10, but realistically, unless you were spending an absurd amount of gems on the event, you would most likely be getting it on the second time, and now all of them have had their second time, so they can all be level 10 relatively easily without going too far out of your way, assuming that you've played both the first color and the second color at this point. As far as weekly objectives or weekly events that we have going on, we have Crypt today, which is going to be a red-purple coloration. For Wednesday, we are going to be getting a new pet, and it's a pretty giant one, haha, quite literally, because it's giant bonus. This is going to be pretty solid of a troop, mainly because there is Titan that exists, and Titan gives half mana start to all giants, which makes for some really good synergies. Not to mention there's already some pretty good giants out there, like all the troll troops, and Hindla and Yerl. Well, actually Yerl not so much, but mainly Hindla and all the troll troops is what really makes giants pretty solid, combined with Titan, and it works out really good, since Titan is among one of the best hero classes, if not the best in the entire game. Just that it's very versatile and can be used for pretty much anything. So yeah, we're finally getting team bonus for that. So even if you're just using like a few giants on your team, you'd still be getting that. This only applies if you're using 3 or 4 giants though. But there are still some teams out there that end up using it, mostly Stormheim related ones. And his pet is from Stormheim. It's the second pet from Stormheim. I'm pretty sure no one's really going to max it out, because I don't believe by the time the kingdom's going to reach around 17 stars or so when it actually needs to have a second level 20 pet, it's most likely going to have a faction by then. So you could just get the faction pet to level 20. So there's probably no need to buy up this pet. But it is giant bonus, so some people might actually go for it, but I personally will not be. This Thursday we have Deathknight. Deathknight's pretty underwhelming. It's actually pretty much maxed out the second you get it fully traded, as it's mostly just utilized for its final trait, which death marks all enemies. So getting it leveled isn't really necessarily that good unless you're just getting it for the Golvania star requirements, which you might need eventually, you know, like getting it to level 40, 70, stuff like that, and so on. But as it currently stands, it is a pretty underwhelming hero class that you're almost never going to use, and if you're using it, you're pretty much just using it to simply kill it out immediately with like an Elspeth, just to death mark all enemies at the starting turn, or for some kind of similar mechanic utilizing its 4 times death mark on death. But that's basically the entirety of the hero class, and not really one that you should be focusing on, as it is pretty useless. Other than that, of course, this weekend we will be having ourselves the Vault event. No new content, but Vault event will be able to grind out Explore and stuff in order to gain a bunch of various gem-related resources, as well as resources just in general. That will also be a really good time to go do challenges if you haven't already, doing all the challenges up to Tier 5. Specific reason why you'd want it to the completion of Tier 5 is Tier 5 has the best reward of any of them, having 7 gem keys and then I believe 3 event keys once you do those 7, which makes it the highest amount of reward for any of the tiers. It's also still towards the lower level range if you do it just to Tier 5 completions, so you'll still be winning at a relatively quick rate throughout the entire time. So definitely a good time to go and consider doing all the factions to Tier 5 completion if you haven't already, which is one of the main things I'll be focusing on with them. They do, of course, go all the way to Tier 10, but the further you go, the harder they get. But up to Tier 5, they're still relatively easy and still quick kills, similar to that of Explore. Maybe it's a little bit harder once you get to like Tier 4, Tier 5. But Tier 1, 2, and 3 are really similar to that of Explore and the previous challenges, how easy they used to be. Other than that, we of course have Soulforge. As far as Soulforge is concerned, we mainly have one extremely noteworthy thing to craft, and that is, of course, Iron Gut. If you are having any trouble with Delves, Iron Gut is the thing you should be getting. It is the best Delve troop in the entire game, period. It is insanely good for Delves. It's unparalleled to anything. The closest thing to it is Zugoth, and it's not even the same. because it has a much higher mana cost than Zugoff, which makes it a higher liability, plus its skull spam makes it a higher liability. But yeah, Iron Gut, go get it, because if you're struggling with delves or you just want to do delves in general, if you're in late game or later, you're definitely going to want to have this as a Devour option. It does a Devour based on its attack value. So if it has 100 attack or higher, it will 100% of the time Devour, assuming they do not have Immune. And even if they have Immune, you can simply use Transform, Curse, or Stun, normally Curse, in order to get rid of their immunity, then Devour them, and just destroy everything. So yes, really good delve option. You can use it outside of delves, though delves is the most noteworthy location. Second most noteworthy would probably be PvP a little bit, because you can build semi-scroll spam teams out of him, and also is because assuming the enemy team has no immunes, you can use him as a pretty solid damage option, since you, well, gets to instant kill everything with every single cast you do. He does all the extra turn as well, which is pretty nice. Rates are pretty underwhelming, but he's used solely for his ability. Other than that, if you don't want to go for a Hiking Iron Gut, or if you already have it, other options that exist are Obsidius and Queen Titania. Normally, I don't really advise getting Legends. However, Queen Titania is among one of the best Legends in the game. It has the best Fairy Fire that currently exists, being able to Fairy Fire on 4 times and 5 times gem matches, which is really good. Other than that, it also has one of the biggest AoEs in the entire game, being able to hit easily into the 30s, most likely into the 40s, and possibly even into the 60s, combining her base value with boost ratio combined with Fairy Fire. So she has a ridiculously high amount of damage output that she ends up doing. Most noteworthy team with her, of course, is Yagwe with Queen Titania, most specifically with a Urskea Crown or Flamer combined with Yagwe, Tapon, Queen Titania. Still one of the strongest teams in the entire game. I believe it's the absolute strongest team on Switch, even though I don't believe they have this as a crafting option, but still among one of the top 5 teams in the game overall. Definitely a great option, and it uses 0 mythics as well, which is a pretty other noteworthy thing about the team. It's one of the strongest, if not the strongest team in the game that uses 0 mythics, so definitely worth considering getting her. Other than that, of course, Obsidius, if you're looking for another mythic to go get. Obsidius is the best stun option in the game, being able to stun on any extra turn, the entire enemy team, assuming they do not have immunity. Other than that, he is an Infernus-like troop, so he gets a bunch of splash damage-like stuff with a little bit of mana accumulation, while also having a storm associated to his color. Unlike the most recent mythic that came into the game that is an Infernus-like troop, which didn't have it, this one does, so it has a little bit of a bonus in that regard. Other than that, also has 50% scroll reduction, which isn't like excessively good, but of course, it does make it so you can use him more as a first slot option, which is something that you can't use with the most recent mythic, nor with Infernus, whereas this one does have that option. But if you're bothering to get this troop, you're getting it for the sole purpose of the stun, most likely, as the stun is the biggest aspect of him. But more often than not, probably just Iron Gut this week, if you don't already have it. Definitely an insanely good delve option. As far as things they have to craft this week, Secrets of the Crypt, only available this Tuesday, so if you haven't already gotten that, you might want to get that just for completionist sake. It's a pretty useless weapon compared to the other true damage weapon of Life and Death. However, it's still an okay one, and it does have slightly different coloration, so you might want to pick it up in case you end up using it for that purpose, like on a red associated color restriction, which is something that the other one can't do with its brown-purple coloration. This is only available on that Tuesday, and you can also just get it from spending some gems into the faction event. Other than that, some other things that are going to be available all week this week. Fire Staff, completely useless weapon, though you might want to get it for completionist purposes. And the other one is Death Spire, another pretty useless one. It's kind of supposed to be used for, well, obviously, for invasions, because it has the tower boost ratio. However, it doesn't really work that well, because the stats early on, when this weapon could theoretically be useful, there's barely any towers. There's only 1 or 2 towers on the opposing team. And then once you get to the later battles, it doesn't do enough damage for you to justify using this against 3 or 4 towers. So it's a really weird weapon, because you can't use it at the lower ones because there's not enough towers, and you can't use it on the higher ones because it doesn't have enough damage. So I don't really know what is the point of this weapon. Obviously, it was supposed to be used for invasions, but it just does not work well for invasions. Maybe they'll rework it into the future, but again, it's basically just for completionist purposes. And Doomed Helm, I would advise getting it for the 500 gems off of the event, so you can go help your guild do the Tower of Doom. However, if you do want to pick it up, it is available for 800 diamonds, and that's cheaper than the 1,000 diamonds that it would cost later on. So I would advise getting it for 500 gems from the event, though you do have it as a Soul Forge option. Of course, the rest are just repeats of what's always available. Anyways, let's go over a bunch of teams now. So, several teams out there that I want to go show. First things first, of course, is red teams for the Tower of Doom. Personally, what I will be using for most of Tower of Doom is, or at least the later part, is a red Ketras team. This is Yasmin's Pride with double Ketras and Gimlet. If you don't have Yasmin's Pride, you can go for a Mountain Crusher replacement. If you don't have a second Ketras, you can go for any red damage source, Gargoyle being the cheapest. Something that might be more expensive that you might want to put there is something like a Ubistet, but double Ketras would end up working out best. Basic premise is you end up destroying their armor, getting a bunch of HP for your entire team so they don't die. They also boost ratios Ketras, so you can do a bunch more damage. Gimlet here is just to convert away all the green just to get some immediate brown, and the brown feeds every single troop you have, and that's basically the whole premise here. So that's that. A cheaper version of this exact same thing, or the cheapest they can get it, is Mountain Crusher, Double Gargoyle, and Gimlet. This is only uses epics and below. I guess technically the weapon's legendary, but that doesn't really count because it's a ridiculously easy weapon to get. You'll probably have it by like level 150 or so, if not sooner. But yeah, you just run Titan for this, Double Gargoyle. This ends up working to about floor 15 or so. It depends on your stats and how many extra stats your guild might have gotten, but up to about 12 to 15 or so. This would end up still working. You just throw, same general premise, you throw Gimlet down, feeds Mountain Crusher then feeds the Double Gargoyles, and then you just keep spamming Double Gargoyle until you win. Obviously, that won't work all the way, so if you need another cheap team to go for the later ones, of course, a Mang Titan is generally the way to go. With this, we're basically just using a bunch of utility troops in order to keep hitting it once we finally get the Mang down. So you go throw down Mang. You then use the Ice Goblin in order to try to move the skulls into a way that you can actually use them. It does 2 explosions, a freeze, and an automatic extra turn. Goblin Rocket's similar premise, except you have even more control on it because you get to choose where the explosion goes, except it's only one, but you get to choose exactly where it goes, so you can use it to move a skull exactly into place, especially since it's an extra turn attached, so you don't even need it to directly land exactly as it is. You can just move it so you can just swipe into it and then get your skull for your Mang one-shot, and Fist of Zorns to create more skulls for you, as well as a little bit of attack boost, and just to skull spam if you happen to have alignment off of yellow. And even if you don't have alignment off of yellow, as long as you don't give the enemy anything, or if you still have barrier on, it shouldn't really matter too much. And the whole premise, of course, is keep Mang tightening. You have your Enrage up, you just keep taking your poke after poke, and everything will die in just one shot due to the sheer amount of attack that you'll gain from casting Mang on high armored enemies. And that you should be able to run all the way through event. There are some battles where it might end up losing quite a few of your backline troops, but as long as you focus on keeping the Mang getting it operational as quickly as possible, and make sure you use a Titan Hero class or something similar that has barrier every brown, you should be fine. The fact that he also has Enrage definitely helps out a lot in case they have skull reduction that might end up stopping him. Other than that, as far as other things, for Crypt, this is a red-purple restriction. This is actually the same team I showed for the other one, but it works for this too. It's Mountain Crusher, Double Gargoyle, Gimlet. Works all the way up to about 100 or so. And to do the free event, or just to get all this stuff done with the free amount of battles, or just spending 30 gems into it, all you're going to need is to go up until about floor 80 or 90 or so. So this could easily go all the way to that point, and you wouldn't need to change anything. So yeah, Mountain Crusher, Double Gargoyle, Gimlet ends up working out pretty nice. You could also go to Triple Gargoyle route, or end up replacing for another damage source. Really just depends which way you want to go with it. But that's one of the cheapest ways of doing it while still doing it efficiently. Other than that, this Thursday, well, it's not really a good class event because the class is pretty bad. Deathknight class, there is a pretty decent team for it nonetheless. You could use either Bang Triple Banshee or Dawnbringer Triple Banshee. I'll personally probably be using Dawnbringer Triple Banshee, but of course for the earlier battles, you could be using like a red AoE weapon or something similar in order to kill them out, like Summer's Fury. But basic premise is you run a bigger AoE weapon for the earlier ones, like Dawnbringer or Summer's Fury or something like that, and for about the first 4 sets, and then for the rest of it, you run something like Bang Banshee. And Banshee has extra purple, and with 3 of them, you'll be able to 2-turn your Banshee as long as you surge correctly. And even if not, you'll easily be able to 3-turn your Banshee. Actually, never mind. You'd be able to 2-turn your Banshee regardless of if you surge. My bad. Because you're already getting 6 mana per take. Actually, technically 7 if we're using that banner. So, never mind. 2 turns you'd have it even if 0 surges occur. So, yeah, you'll be able to get that. She transforms into red. Red will feed whatever red-related weapon you have here. And then you just go crazy from there. And, of course, you can just use Mang Titan to clear it out. Though Dawnbringer probably will be a little bit towards the quicker side, particularly towards the earlier battle, if you do own a Dawnbringer. Other than that, 2 Lamashtu teams, and both of which I guess we will go and use as well. So, first off, we're going to run with the Lamagrim version. So, Lamagrim and Furnace combo, it's a pretty solid combo. I personally haven't been running it much, but it is definitely very, very strong when it works. The only problem with that is when it works, But of course we have this, so we can empower right into full mana. We have burn on everything, simply from taking 1 extra turn, or our billion extra turns that we have been, which allows us to 12 spawn off of our Element Grim. We have perpetual purple storm off of our last slot there with the Umber Wolf. And basically the whole premise is that we could just ideally keep casting over and over again with our Element Grim loop. And we could throw in furnaces occasionally. One slightly bad thing about this troop though, the most recent epic empowered that we end up getting, this ends up converting out its own color because it does the yellow to purple, yet it uses yellow, which is a little bit of a weird design there. If I'm not mistaken, it's the only empowered that actually does that. Can't recall another one that does, but it's kind of annoying just because it keeps denying out itself every single time you end up going for that. Of course, this team isn't a perfect infinite loop by any means, but it still gets the job done in that regard. And probably one of the better, stronger things that it gets used for. Plus, it's pure red, so you can use it for pure red instances. I'm not sure you would really run it much for this event, since it's pretty expensive given what it is, but it might be something for Guild War Red if you wanted to try it out. But you could also probably get away with it for the lower range of Tower of Doom if you did, as it is Red Tower of Doom after all this week. Anyways, the other thing I wanted to show is actually not here, it is an Explorer, but before we do, let's grab our Tribute, can't not grab that. And Explorer, let's go to, where do I still need? I guess let's go to Zhejian real quick, doesn't really matter too much. I do need a Trait Stone here. But, Soul Farming. So obviously, I haven't really covered it much since then, a little bit on streams, but I haven't covered a video for it yet. However, Soul Farming is a little bit nerfed ever since this most recent patch. That is mainly because the most efficient way previously to Soul Farm was within the challenges, and now challenges are a lot different than they were. So that ended up being a pretty substantial nerf to the soul rate that you can do. It's probably around 10,000 to 20,000 souls slower per hour. It's already pretty quick though. It was upwards of like 60,000 at one point prior to that nerf, but now it's been quite a bit lower. But now one thing that we have to kind of do whenever we want to soul farm, if we're going to soul farm, is we kind of have to bring these teams over to explore. This is obviously going to slow it down quite a bit because the kind of battles that we're going to be getting are going to be quite different. Not to mention, we can't really use difficulty to raise up the amount of souls we get simply because it would make the battle take even longer, so it wouldn't be worth it. However, we can still get it done. It just takes, this is a little bit weirder how it ends up going. So basically the whole premise that we want to do is Farish Ra, the strongest thing on the opposing team, where she will keep hitting the weakest, and we just simply use the Dragon Soul to do a good majority of our damage through its AoEs. And this is pretty much how you soul farm. As you can currently see, we're getting about 280 souls per battle, and it's going under a minute per each. I haven't time to see how much souls per hour this is yet, but it does seem like it's one of the slightly better ones, because now that we have to run it in Explorer, you need to do a combination of both speed and soul gain. And there aren't too many things that can do that simultaneously. But luckily with her empowered option, it does substantially speed it up compared to not having it. Because before we really had a good empower option for a Dragon Soul, it would take multiple turns before you could really get him operational. But now you can get him operational ideally on turn 1, as long as you have a good board. So it ends up going way quicker than it previously was able to. But you just Farish Ra, the biggest thing. If you don't have Farish Ra, that does slow down this team. And of course your soul rate. However, you can replace it with Azurus or any soul-related troop with Necromancy. However, Farish Ra is actually used within this context of this team. Unlike before, where you just use it with Dragon Soul and you wouldn't actually touch him, you would just use him for his 150%. He's actually utilized for his ability within the context of this team. A little bit of a bad board here, but you get the general premise of this. It's probably one of the better soul farming teams in the game. Still haven't tested to see what the absolute most optimal is, though this could theoretically be it. Or pretty close. The only really big issue with this is it doesn't use a second Farish Ra, so that's substantially lowering the potential amount of souls. However, quite a few people probably don't own a second Farish Ra, so seems like a pretty solid option if you only own one, is the bottom line. It's definitely pretty decent. It's getting like 200 plus souls per battle, like 200 to 300 range. And yeah, wins pretty quick. Almost seems like it's averaging around a 30-second or so. Obviously, that can change quite a bit if you get a bad board with absolutely no alignment for a while. But definitely not too bad for soul farming if you've been lacking any options for doing such a thing. And most things from this team can be replaced. Dragon Soul cannot. Lamashtu cannot, but it's available right now, so you can easily go get that. The two things that can be replaced, though, are Farish Ra and Umber Wolf. Not for 1-to-1 to be exactly perfect, but Farish Ra you can replace with Azurus or any Necromancer, as I mentioned, and Umber Wolf can be replaced with any hero class that has Purple Storm. It is specifically important in this context of this team that is Purple Storm because you're creating purple off of Lamashtu, which is one of the reasons why you need that Purple Storm to synergize with it. In the past, you could kind of use Red Storm as well. However, this team now, due to this convert, is a lot more purple oriented, so you're definitely going to want to go the purple Storm route. Necromancer is a pretty good option for that. However, any hero class with purple Storm would also do if you happen to have it on them. Anyways, I believe that is everything. If you still have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below, and I will get around to them. Hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful week. And, oh, actually, there's one other thing I guess I'll mention real quick. Don't forget, the new Mythic that came in last Friday, since I haven't covered a video on it yet, which I will be very, very soon. But this new Mythic is still available till the end of Thursday on Friday Reset. So you still have a whole, like, 2 days or so to be able to go and get it. So if you haven't gotten it from Glory Gem Guild or VIP Chest yet, you still have some time. And even if you don't get it within that time, do keep in mind you can just get it for 4,000 diamonds in the future off of Soulforge or off of pure luck off of those keys into the future when it's not an exclusive mythic. Anyways, guys, I will catch all of you later. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful week. Goodbye, everyone.